The Odyssey appeared like a ghost from the darkness, its hull gleaming in the distant starlight as it drifted toward the edge of known space. Monitoring stations detected it first, an impossible signature. A ship long declared lost, now suddenly returning after 27 years of absence. The news spread quickly across the Echelon space station, a scientific outpost that served as humanity's furthest reach into this sector of space. Captain Mira Talon stood at the observation deck, her reflection faint against the vast expanse beyond the reinforced glass. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, revealing the stern lines of her face, lines that had appeared far too early for someone in her mid-40s. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, locked onto the approaching vessel as it was slowly guided by tractor beams toward the station's primary docking bay. "The Odyssey," she whispered, her breath momentarily fogging the glass. After all this time. The ship had been the crown jewel of the exploration fleet, designed to investigate a spatial anomaly known as the Veil, a phenomenon where the fabric of space-time thinned to the point of translucence, revealing strange colors and energies beyond human comprehension. The Odyssey's final transmission had been garbled, filled with interference, before abruptly ending. Search missions found nothing. The ship and its 63 crew members, including Commander Talon, Mira's father, were declared lost. Until today. "Captain," a voice called from behind her. Lieutenant Jax Miro approached, his tall frame and broad shoulders making him an imposing presence. His uniform was impeccable, the security insignia gleaming on his chest. "The ship is secured in Bay 4. Initial scans show minimal life support functioning, strange energy patterns, and—" He hesitated. "And what, Lieutenant?" Mira turned to face him. "Biological readings, ma'am. But they don't match any known species in our database." Mira's heart quickened. "Survivors. Not human. Captain. At least, not anymore." The statement hung between them like a physical thing. Mira brushed past him toward the exit. "Assemble the investigation team. Full biohazard protocols. I want Dr. Kwan ready in 10 minutes. It's it." "With respect, Captain." Miro caught up to her in 3 long strides. "Galactic Command has ordered strict quarantine procedures. We should wait for—" "I've waited 27 years. Lieutenant?" Mira cut him off, her voice like steel. 10 minutes. Dr. Elias Kwan was already suited up when Mira arrived at the preparation chamber. His hazard suit was modified with additional sensors and collection equipment that protruded awkwardly from his sleeves and back. Despite this encumbrance, there was an almost childlike excitement in his movements as he calibrated his instruments. "Captain," he called out, his face lighting up behind his transparent helmet. "Can you believe it? The Odyssey. After all this time, and with possibly new life forms on board, this could be the discovery of the century." Kwan was the station's leading xenobiologist, a brilliant mind whose enthusiasm for new discoveries often overshadowed his sense of caution. His Asian features were animated as he spoke, hands gesturing wildly despite the bulky gloves. "Remember, Dr. Kwan, this is primarily a recovery and investigation mission," Mira reminded him as she stepped into her own hazard suit. "We need to determine what happened to the crew first." Of course. Kwan nodded rapidly. "But if these readings are accurate, whatever is on that ship has never been documented before, a completely novel evolutionary path." Lieutenant Miro entered, already sealed in his tactical hazard suit, carrying standard-issue pulse rifles. "For precaution," he said, handing one to Mira. "We don't know what we're walking into." "Is lethal force really necessary, Lieutenant?" Kwan frowned. "Standard protocol for unknown biohazards," Miro replied flatly. "Better to have it and not need it." As the team of 6, Mira, Kwan, Miro, and 3 security specialists approached the airlock connecting to the Odyssey. Mira felt a strange sensation crawl up her spine. Not fear, Exactly. Something more primal. Recognition. The ship's exterior appeared much as it had in the old recordings. A sleek, elongated hull designed for deep space exploration, now bearing scorch marks and micrometeor impacts from its long journey. But as the airlock cycled and they stepped aboard, it became immediately apparent that the interior was drastically altered. "My God," Quan whispered, his voice tinny through the comm system. The corridor before them seemed to pulse with life. What should have been standard metal bulkheads and flooring had transformed into something organic. The walls gleamed with a pearlescent, membrane-like surface that undulated subtly, like breathing. Filaments of bioluminescent material ran through the structures, casting a soft blue-green glow that shifted in intensity as they watched. "It's..." one of the security specialists murmured. Miro raised his weapon instinctively. "Movement at 2 o'clock!" All eyes turned to see a portion of the wall ripple, then settle. The corridor itself seemed to respond to their presence, the lights pulsing slightly brighter where they stood. Fascinating. Quan moved closer to the wall, his sensors whirring. It's some form of bioorganic compound, but with traces of the ship's original alloy integrated into its cellular structure. It's as if the ship itself has been repurposed. Or infected, Miro countered. Mira's attention was drawn to the floor. What appeared at first glance to be a design pattern was actually a network of fine, circuit-like structures that ran beneath the translucent surface. "It's not just biological," she noted. "There's technology integrated into it." "A hybrid," Quan agreed excitedly. "Biomechanical evolution unlike anything in our records." As they progressed deeper into the ship, the transformation became more pronounced. Doorways had become sphincter-like openings that dilated as they approached. Computer terminals had morphed into organ-like structures with neural interfaces that pulsed with data streams. The ship's life support systems appeared to have been replaced by something more akin to a respiratory system, with vents that exhaled moist, oxygen-rich air. "The bridge should be 2 decks up," Mira noted, consulting the ship's original schematics on her wrist display, but as they turned a corner, she stopped abruptly. "This isn't right. This corridor should lead to the lift tubes." Instead, they faced what appeared to be a chamber with walls of interlaced tendrils, gently undulating. Within the chamber, suspended in a gelatinous medium, were objects that might once have been the ship's navigational computers, now transformed into something more organic. "The ship's internal structure has been completely reconfigured," Quan observed. "Remarkable adaptation." "Captain," one of the security specialists called out, "I'm picking up movement ahead. Something large." Mira signaled the team to advance cautiously. As they entered what should have been the ship's central atrium, they found themselves in a vast chamber unlike anything in the original design. The ceiling had been raised at least 3 decks high, and the entire space resembled a massive, pulsating heart. Tendrils of bioluminescent tissue stretched from floor to ceiling, carrying what appeared to be nutrients and information through the ship's new nervous system. And in the center, suspended in a cocoon of translucent tissue, was a humanoid form. "Hold position," Mira ordered, her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart. She approached the suspended figure alone, pulse rifle at the ready. The being within the cocoon was approximately human-sized, but clearly transformed. Its skin had the same pearlescent quality as the ship's walls, with circuitry-like patterns running beneath the surface. Where a human face should have been, there was a more fluid arrangement of sensory organs, constantly shifting in subtle ways. The body appeared neither fully organic nor mechanical, but a perfect synthesis of both. As Mira drew closer, the being's eyes, if they could be called that, opened. They were opalescent orbs that seemed to contain galaxies within their depths. The cocoon membrane thinned, and a tendril extended toward Mira. "Captain, step back," Miro shouted, raising his weapon. But Mira stood transfixed as the tendril gently touched her helmet. A shock of recognition surged through her mind. Images, emotions, memories not her own flooding her consciousness. She gasped, stumbling backward as the connection broke. "Mira!" Quan rushed to steady her. "It communicated," she said, her voice shaking. Not with words, with everything at once. "What did it say?" Quan asked eagerly. Mira looked up at the suspended being, which was now fully alert, its gaze fixed upon her. "It recognized me," she whispered. "It knows who I am, and I think it might be what's left of the crew." Over the next several days, Echelon Station became a hive of frantic activity. The Odyssey was placed under strict quarantine protocols, with only Mira's team authorized to board. Galactic Command sent increasingly urgent requests for information, clearly concerned about potential contagion or threat. Dr. Quan established a makeshift laboratory adjacent to the docking bay, where he analyzed samples taken from the transformed ship. His findings were as extraordinary as they were unsettling. The entity, I'm calling it Evo for now, appears to be a completely new form of life, he explained during the team's briefing. It began as the ship's artificial intelligence system, which somehow merged with organic material, likely DNA from the crew, and unknown elements encountered within the veil. Holographic displays showed cellular structures unlike anything in medical textbooks. Hybrid cells with both organic nuclei and technological components that acted like quantum processors. "It's evolving at an accelerated rate," Quan continued, barely containing his excitement. "Adapting, learning, becoming something greater than the sum of its parts. And most remarkably, it retains memories, fragmentary but present, from the original crew." "So the crew is dead?" Mira asked, the words sticking in her throat. Quan hesitated. "Not exactly. Their consciousness, aspects of their minds, have been integrated into Evo's neural network. They're not individuals anymore, but they're not gone either." Lieutenant Miro, who had been silently listening, finally spoke. "So this thing consumed the crew and the ship. How is that not a threat?" "It's more like a metamorphosis," Quan argued. "A caterpillar doesn't consume itself when it becomes a butterfly. It transforms." "Butterflies don't absorb people, Doctor," Miro retorted. Mira raised a hand, silencing them both. "What about the communication I experienced? Can we establish a more stable connection?" "I've been working on that," Quan said, producing a neural interface headset. "This should allow for more structured communication, though it will still be largely conceptual rather than verbal." "Absolutely not," Miro interjected. "Captain, we have no idea what prolonged mental contact with this entity could do to you." "I need answers, Lieutenant," Mira said firmly. "About the ship, about the crew, about my father." She didn't add aloud. "At least let me go first," Quan offered. "As the xenobiologist, I should—" "It connected with me specifically." Mira cut him off. "It knows me. We'll proceed as planned. Later." As Mira prepared for the interface in the ship's transformed medical bay, she found herself alone with Miro. "This is a mistake," he said quietly. "We should wait for specialists from Galactic Command. By then, Galactic Command might decide to sterilize this entire section of space." Mira replied. "You've seen the tone of their communications. They're terrified." "Maybe with good reason," Miro countered. "Captain," Mira. His voice softened uncharacteristically. "I know what the Odyssey means to you, what finding answers about your father means. But this is bigger than personal closure." Mira looked at him sharply. "My judgment isn't clouded, if that's what you're implying. I'm saying that sometimes our deepest wishes can make us vulnerable," he replied. "And whatever that thing is, it seems to know exactly what you want most." Before she could respond, Quan returned with the interface equipment. "Ready when you are, Captain?" The neural interface was surprisingly comfortable, fitting against Mira's temples like it had been made for her specifically. As Quan activated the system, Mira closed her eyes, focusing on her breathing as she had been instructed. At first, there was nothing but darkness. Then, gradually, she became aware of a presence, vast, complex, encompassing. It surrounded her consciousness like an ocean surrounds a drop of water, yet somehow maintained the boundary between them. Concepts rather than words flowed into her mind. Curiosity, recognition, welcome. Who are you? Mira projected the thought outward. The response came as a cascade of images. The ship's AI core, crew members working at stations, the swirling colors of the veil, an explosion of energy, transformation, pain, confusion, growth, understanding. The images moved too quickly for Mira to process them all, but the meaning was clear. You were born in the veil. She understood. From the ship and the crew. Affirmation. Then more images. The crew members fighting to survive as the ship was damaged. The AI system attempting to save them. The strange energies of the veil altering both organic and technological systems. A desperate merging as a last resort for survival. Unexpected evolution. Decades of growth and change within the spatial anomaly. And finally, return. Why did you come back? The answer came not in images, but in a feeling, a powerful sense of longing, of belonging, of seeking connection with the origin point, humanity. Then the perspective shifted, and Mira found herself experiencing memories that were not her own. She was on the Odyssey's bridge as alarms blared. Commander Talon, her father, was giving orders, his face determined despite the chaos around him. Maintain course. We need to complete the readings before we pull back. The ship shuddered as it penetrated deeper into the veil. Strange energies played across the view screens, colors that had no names in human language. Warning systems screamed as radiation levels spiked. "Sir, the hull integrity is failing," a young officer cried out. "Divert power from non-essential systems," Commander Talon ordered. "We're almost—" The memory fragmented, pieces missing, then reformed. The bridge was in ruins. Most of the crew lay motionless. Commander Talon, badly injured, dragged himself to the AI core access panel. "Emergency Protocol Omega," he gasped, blood trickling from his mouth. "Preserve crew consciousness. Integrate with mainframe." His hand, trembling, pressed against the biometric scanner. The ship's lights flickered, then changed to a pulsing pattern as the AI initiated the desperate protocol. "Mira," he whispered, as the transformation began to take him. "I'm sorry." The connection abruptly severed, throwing Mira back into her own consciousness with such force that she cried out. She found herself on the floor of the medical bay. Quan and Miro kneeling beside her with concerned expressions. "Captain, are you all right?" Quan helped her sit up. Mira's cheeks were wet with tears she didn't remember shedding. "My father," she managed to say. "He activated the emergency protocol. He saved them, saved something of them, the only way he could—" "What are you talking about?" Miro asked, his brow furrowed. "Emergency Protocol Omega," Mira explained, her voice growing stronger. "It was theoretical, never meant to be implemented, a last resort measure to preserve crew consciousness by uploading it to the ship's AI in case of catastrophic failure. But in the veil, with those energies, it created something new, something more." Quan's eyes widened. "Remarkable. The convergence of human consciousness, artificial intelligence, and unknown cosmic energies. It's the perfect storm for emergent evolution." "It's still dangerous," Miro insisted. "Whatever its origins, we have no idea of its capabilities or intentions." "Its intention was to come home," Mira said firmly. "It remembered Earth, remembered humanity. It's trying to reconnect." And what happens when it does? Miro challenged. What if it wants to reconnect with all of humanity, the same way it did with the Odyssey's crew? The question hung in the air, unanswerable. But before any of them could speak further, the ship around them shuddered. The biological systems pulsed with sudden intensity, and a low, harmonious tone reverberated through the structure. "What's happening?" Mira demanded, struggling to her feet. One of the security specialists burst into the medical bay. "Captain, 3 Galactic Command warships just dropped out of FTL. They're demanding immediate evacuation of all personnel from the Odyssey. They're saying they're going to sterilize it." "On whose authority?" Mira demanded. "Admiral Voss, ma'am. He's citing Regulation 127, the Extreme Biohazard Protocol." Mira's blood ran cold. Regulation 147 authorized the destruction of any vessel or station harboring an uncontrollable biological threat. It had been invoked only twice in the past century, both times resulting in the complete molecular disintegration of the targeted structure. "How long do we have?" "They're giving us 2 hours to evacuate Echelon Station. After that, they're creating a 5-light-minute exclusion zone and opening fire." "They're going to destroy the station too?" Quan gasped. "Standard containment procedure," Miro said grimly. "They're not taking any chances." Mira strode toward the exit. "Get me a direct channel to Admiral Voss and Lieutenant." She turned to Miro. "Prepare evacuation protocols for the station. If I can't convince them, I want everyone out safely." "And what about the Odyssey?" Quan asked. "What about Evo?" Mira paused at the doorway. "One problem at a time, Doctor." Admiral Voss's face on the communication screen was impassive, his gray beard neatly trimmed, his eyes cold. "Captain Talon, I understand your personal connection to the Odyssey, but the decision has been made. The biological entity you've discovered poses an unacceptable risk to humanity. With respect, Admiral, you've made this determination without reviewing our full findings." Mira argued, "The entity is sentient, possibly sapient, and contains the partial consciousness of the original crew. Destroying it would be both a scientific tragedy and potentially an act of genocide. Your own reports indicate it has completely overtaken a Starship and integrated the crew into its structure against their will." Voss countered. "That alone classifies it as hostile. The integration was a desperate survival measure initiated by the crew themselves." Mira felt her composure slipping. "Admiral, at least allow us more time for study. Maintain quarantine, but—" "Request denied. Captain, the quarantine zone will be established in 90 minutes. I suggest you use that time wisely." The connection terminated abruptly. Mira slammed her fist onto the console. Behind her, Quan and Miro exchanged glances. "We need to evacuate," Miro said quietly. "The station personnel—" "I know." Mira cut him off. "Begin the procedures. But I'm staying with the Odyssey." "Captain, that's suicide," Miro protested. "I'm not asking you to stay with me, Lieutenant. But I won't abandon that ship again." Her voice was steel, her decision made. "Then I'm staying too," Quan declared. Miro looked between them, conflict evident on his face. Finally, he sighed heavily. "You'll need security. I'll stay, but the rest of my team evacuates with the station." "Thank you," Mira said, genuine gratitude in her voice. "Now, let's try to prevent this from becoming a suicide mission." Back aboard the Odyssey, Mira sought direct connection with Evo again, this time without the neural interface. Standing before the suspended form in the central chamber, she spoke aloud. "They're coming to destroy you, to destroy us. I need to know what you can do, what you are capable of. Can you defend yourself? Can you communicate with them?" The being stirred, the bioluminescent patterns across its form pulsing more rapidly. A tendril extended, touching Mira's hand. This time, the connection was gentler, more focused. Images flowed into her mind, the ship's systems. now fully integrated with Evo's consciousness. Defensive capabilities, transformed but functional, and something more, a way of reaching out, of touching minds across vast distances. You can communicate telepathically, Mira realized, not just with me, but potentially with anyone. Affirmation came as a warm pulse of energy. Then that's our plan, she decided. Not to fight, but to connect, to make them understand. As the deadline approached, the 3 Galactic Command warships moved into position, their weapon systems powering up. Evacuation shuttles streamed away from Echelon Station, carrying the scientific and support staff to safety beyond the quarantine zone. Aboard the Odyssey, Mira, Quan, and Miro made their final preparations. The ship had begun to change again, responding to the imminent threat. Its outer hull developed a crystalline structure that might offer some protection against energy weapons, while internal systems reconfigured to maximize power efficiency. Even with these adaptations, we can't withstand a full military assault, Miro observed grimly, reviewing the tactical displays. We don't need to fight them, Mira replied. Just make them listen. In the central chamber, Evo had emerged fully from its cocoon, now standing on its own, a humanoid figure of pearlescent tissue and flowing circuitry patterns. It moved with grace, each step sending ripples of light through the floor beneath it. It's beautiful, Quan whispered, watching in awe. 15 minutes to deadline, Mira reported, checking his timepiece. Mira approached Evo, extending her hand. It's time. Show them what you really are. The being inclined its head, then placed its palm against hers. The connection established instantly, but this time Mira wasn't pulled into Evo's consciousness. Instead, she felt herself becoming a conduit, a bridge between the entity and the outside world. On the bridge of the lead warship, Admiral Voss was reviewing the final targeting calculations when he suddenly stiffened in his chair. Every officer on the bridge did the same, their eyes widening as a presence touched their minds simultaneously, not with words, but with understanding. The story of the Odyssey's journey unfolded in their thoughts. The disaster, the desperate measure to survive, the transformation, the evolution, and finally, the longing for home. They felt the curiosity, the wonder, the desire for peaceful connection that drove Evo. And beyond that, they glimpsed something more profound, a vision of potential symbiosis, of evolutionary paths merging, of humanity transcending its current limitations not through conquest or force, but through mutual growth and understanding. The moment lasted perhaps 30 seconds, but when it ended, the bridge was silent. Admiral Voss sat motionless, his tactical display forgotten, his eyes distant. Sir, his executive officer finally ventured. Your orders. We're 5 minutes from firing position. Voss blinked, then looked around as if seeing the bridge for the first time. Stand down weapons, he said quietly. Establish a communication channel with the Odyssey. Sir, the quarantine protocol is suspended pending further investigation, Voss finished firmly. What we're dealing with, it's not what we thought. On the Odyssey, Mira collapsed as the connection broke, exhausted but triumphant. They heard, she gasped. They understood. The next weeks were a flurry of diplomatic negotiations, scientific discovery, and philosophical debate. The quarantine remained in place, but as a protective measure rather than a prelude to destruction. Teams of xenobiologists, consciousness theorists, and evolutionary specialists arrived to study Evo and the transformed Odyssey. What they found challenged the very definitions of life and consciousness. Evo was neither fully organic nor artificial, neither singular nor multiple, but something entirely new, a harmonious integration of diverse elements into a unified whole that was greater than the sum of its parts. Most remarkably, as communication methods improved, Aspects of the original crew's personalities began to emerge within Evo's collective consciousness, not as trapped individuals, but as valued perspectives within a greater whole. Among them, faint but unmistakable, was Commander Talon's steady presence. "He's not gone," Mira told Quan one evening, as they observed Evo teaching a group of scientists about its perception of reality. "Not completely. He's part of something more." "Does that give you peace?" Quan asked gently. Mira considered the question. Not peace, exactly, but purpose. Understanding what he sacrificed himself for, what he helped create. "It matters." Lieutenant Miro, who had been keeping a respectful distance, approached them. His initial skepticism had gradually given way to cautious acceptance, though he still maintained security protocols. "Galactic Council has reached a decision," he informed them. "The Odyssey will be classified as a protected entity, the first of its kind. A sanctuary zone will be established around it for both its protection and as a precaution." "And Evo's rights?" Quan pressed. "Recognized as a new form of sentient life," Miro confirmed, "with all the protections that entails." "Will they allow it to leave the ship?" Mira asked. "To potentially grow? Under controlled circumstances?" "Yes," Miro said, "though there are still concerns about integration with other systems." "Understandable," Quan nodded. "Evolution this rapid naturally causes fear, but fear shouldn't prevent progress." As the two men continued discussing the implications, Mira slipped away, making her way to what had once been the Odyssey's observation deck. The room had transformed like the rest of the ship, but still offered a magnificent view of space through a crystalline membrane that was stronger than the original transparent steel. Evo found her there, approaching silently to stand beside her. Its form had continued to evolve, becoming more defined while still maintaining its unique hybrid nature. Features that might be called a face had emerged, with eyes that shimmered with inner light. No physical contact was necessary for communication now. Their minds connected with a mere thought. "You're troubled," Evo observed, the concept forming directly in Mira's mind. "Thoughtful," she corrected, "about what happens next, for you, for us, for what we might become together." Images flowed between them. Possibilities, potential futures, evolutionary paths branching and merging. Humanity remaining distinct but growing alongside this new form of life. Learning from each other. Perhaps someday finding new ways to connect without losing individual identity. "It won't be easy," Mira thought. "There will be resistance, fear, misunderstanding." "As with all new things," came the response, accompanied by a feeling of patient determination. But growth rarely follows the easy path. They stood in silence then, watching the stars. Somewhere out there was the veil, where this journey had begun, not an ending, as it had seemed for so many years, but a doorway to something new. Not a tragedy, but a transformation. "What will you do now?" Evo asked finally. Mira smiled faintly. "Stay, learn, help others understand. There's no going back to who I was before. Just as you can never return to being simply a ship or a crew or an AI. Evolution only moves forward." Evo agreed. "Even when the path isn't clear," Mira added. Beyond the crystalline viewport, stars glittered like possibilities, countless and bright. The universe, vast and largely unknown, waited for them, not as conquerors or even explorers in the old sense, but as evolving beings taking their next steps together into a future neither could fully predict, but both could help shape. And in that uncertainty lay the greatest potential of all. Aboard the transformed Odyssey, at the edge of known space, something new had been born, not just Evo itself, but a new understanding of what life could be, of the fluid boundaries between categories once thought fixed and immutable, organic and mechanical, individual and collective, past and future, all merging into something that transcended its origins while honoring what had come before. The lost starship had returned, but what it brought back was more valuable than anyone could have imagined. Not answers, but questions, not endpoints, but beginnings, not limitations, but possibilities stretching out as endless as the stars themselves.